So 2 Samuel 2, 5 through 7. David sent messengers unto the men of Jeshua Gilead. This is one of the big cities. This is most likely where the battle took place, where Saul died. I believe it is. Pretty sure it's the same area. Part of Mount Gilboa. But, so this is a city that he sent the messengers to, and said unto them, Blessed be ye of the Lord, that ye have showed this kindness unto your Lord, even unto Saul, and have buried him. So these men are the ones that took kindness and buried Saul. But you got to realize during this time, most kings and anything that would have stood against those that came before them, they would have put all these people away to make an example of them, to show their authority and that they need to be aligned with them rather than the one that passed. So we see this with Herod in the New Testament, where he kills all the child because of the king, which was Jesus, because he didn't want anything to threaten his throne. And the wise men ended up having to flee because of the fact that they showed devotion to a new king. Herod would end up killing them if they came back through that way. So we see how traditionally kings reacted. And now these men who buried Saul are most likely people are expecting what he's going to do with them. What will he have done? So they're looking at it as the Jewish law showed how to treat the dead and how you bury them and give them proper respect. So they're just going along with it. Well, because David was a new king from a different line, that's where the problem arose, possible problem arose. And now the Lord showed kindness and truth unto you, and also require you this kindness, because ye done this thing. So instead of being upset about it, David's giving him credit. He's giving him acceptance. We see in the last verse, in verse 4, how he hears about this. And now he has a choice to react. He could have just ignored it. He could have just let it go. He could have just whatever. But he's chosen to give these men credit for doing this. This would have possibly took courage on their part, because they didn't know how David necessarily would have reacted to this now that he was king. Because power can change people. This could have changed how David reacted towards things. And they could have been doing this at their own risk, burying Saul. So David, being a man seeking after the Lord, realizes that what they're doing, even though Saul was going against the Lord when he died, that this was still the Lord's anointed, as David saw it. Most likely these men burying Saul did this before the story even of what happens in the first chapter, where he kills a man who claims for killing Saul, is even heard. Now, if that would have been heard, they would have expected him to be praised. But they were doing it simply because it's what needed to be done. Therefore, now let your hands be strengthened, and be ye valiant for your master. Saul is dead, and also the house of Judah have anointed me king over them. So it's made apparent to David that these are just not men burying Saul. These are his servants. These are people that served him as king. And now he's given them really a choice, because he's been made king of Judah, which happened in the earlier part of this chapter. And so he's kind of, with David, he's really given them a choice to stay in Judah or to move elsewhere. Because David ain't going to have them go against his authority, but David's a righteous man and would let them leave. Oftentimes, our decisions can be rash and quick to jump to doing things. David here realizes that these men that served Saul could be allies to him. They could show that same dedication to serving him. And most kings of them days would just put all these men away, did away with them, and started up with their own honorable men that were devoted to them. But David realizes that even after Saul died, they still showed dedication to him. And David also realizes that the dedication they're showing to him, David don't want the dedication. Ultimately, he wants them to be dedicated to the Lord. It's just, he's king. The Lord gave him that position. Ultimately, David's dedication to Saul was because the Lord put him as king, not because of what Saul had done. And when we take that focus, then we make decisions like what David's doing here, where he's looking past what has actually happened and seeing some of what the Lord wants him to do. Oftentimes things come our past and get us all mixed up and get us confused, and which would later happen to David and happen to Solomon, where all the things around them would cause them to go where they weren't supposed to. And it can easily happen to us, but if we keep our focus on the Lord, things around us are going to only allow us to show God's kindness and mercy and love. And we're going to find blessing in doing this. And that's what David was doing. Rather than turn these men against him because of their devotion to Saul, he's going to have them see if they could show that devotion to him being king. Oftentimes we're too prone to make people enemies when they could be our allies and be help. Just because people have different ideas and different viewpoints doesn't mean they're standing against us. But oftentimes that's the way we see it. We see them doing this and us wanting to do something else, and we see, well, we can't work together. But unity in Christ shows exactly that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to overcome these differences to work together. And that's exactly what David's doing with these men. He's trying to overcome the differences they've had. And ultimately, he's hoping that the devotion they showed to Saul was the same devotion that he showed to Saul, was because the Lord anointed Saul. And he's letting them know, now the Lord has anointed me king over Judah. So he's hoping they transition that focus towards serving him as king. And oftentimes that's what we have to do with our focus. When it's misdirected, we have to focus it on something that pertains to God. Service to him, praise, prayer. Maybe, because going through something, David could have easily turned this into a mess, rather than something that could give God glory. By the way David reacted to these men truly knew where David's heart was, and it was towards the Lord. It's when we're faced with decisions where it's so easy to make another decision, but we choose a godly decision, that people truly know where our hearts are and where they lie.